Good day, everyone. James Hicks here from HicksNewMedia. Welcome to Perspectives in Focus and our special segment, Lunch with the Lawyer, where me and my colleague Gus Passanante get together, talk about topics within the financial tech world, items around the investment world, items around legal litigation, things of that nature. And it's always an interesting conversation. Today is going to be an interesting conversation. It's almost like moons have aligned, stars have aligned, but whatever the case may be, it's always good to have quality content and quality information to talk about and share with you, the community. It's going to be lively. I know it's going to be very engaging. If you have a question, drop a Q in the comments. We will get to it, but let's go ahead and get into it, y'all. Appreciate you for joining. Lunch with a lawyer. Man, that's a great topic. I mean, you came up with that, and I was like, what is Gus talking about? But you know what? Yeah, it works. It works. Dr. Passanante, how are you, sir? Listen, I've promoted you. I've elevated you. So I don't know if Mark's listening or not, but yet now we're going to put it's not just Esquire. We're going to throw doctor on there too.
I appreciate that. But I don't think I'd ever be smart enough to be a doctor.
Okay. The man is humble. It's all good.
But I'm good, James. I'm good. It's getting cold over here. Probably.
Well, you know, put a jacket on. Be safe. I know there's some inclement weather, Midwest, and all the way going over to the East Coast. But so I just wish everyone safety and good times here while they get to spend this holiday season with their family. Today's conversation is around a lot of things. It really is, and really complex conversation as well. Something that can't just be understood really in one session, 145-minute session, things of that nature. But we wanted to talk about the OTC market. We wanted to talk about SPAC. We wanted to drop in a lot of acronyms here. And what I like to do is pause, step back, and actually decompress what these acronyms mean. So when we say SPAC, give us that 35,000 foot level. Give us that 101 kind of education of what it is a SPAC is, as you would have the conversation with someone at a dinner party or someone on an elevator. Kind of give an explanation to that, so no one's assuming, right? So no one's actually just thinking they know. Let's hear it from someone who actually is in the know, if you don't mind, guys.
Yeah, of course. I think that's an important background to have, especially if we're going to have this conversation. A SPAC stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Corporation, right? So all a SPAC is just a non-operational company, and the whole purpose of that company is to acquire an operational company and continue its existence, right? And that company, that operational company, is then existing on NASDAQ or whatever exchange that SPAC was listed on. SPACs are public companies, so they have to go through the IPO process, file an S1, the whole 9 yards, go through an underwriting, auditors, so everything, right? There are a lot of specific rules as they relate to SPACs and I guess the SPAC's authority and some guidelines that SPACs are required to follow. I think the general outlook on SPACs has kind of evolved over the years, although they've been around for a long time. I know that the market perspective of SPACs has changed over the years, but I guess the best way to look at it is just it's a company that started, and the only purpose of the company is to acquire another company.
Okay. The title of the conversation that we had today was really how OTC companies are capitalizing on SPAC. So using that as the backdrop, that as the essence of the next of my next questions, how are you seeing that turn into fruition? Right? How are smaller organizations, the OTC companies, actually capitalizing on taking advantage of SPAC opportunities? SPAC opportunities, probably.
Yeah, for sure. So the reason I kind of brought up that whole market perspective of SPACs is because that's kind of how we, have gotten to where we are as a firm and how we've kind of began advising our clients in this direction. Um, Obviously, Mark has been on a part of the OTC world for a very long time. Been the CEO of multiple public companies, has dealt with IPOs, has dealt with reverse merges, has been doing this for, I think, longer than I've been alive. But um, so, he's obviously very familiar with it. I don't know if I ever told you this or told everyone this, but Mark was actually my professor in law school.
Yeah,
Um,
we talked about that. That's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good
so we met
stuff.
we did, so everyone is aware. That's Mark was my professor in law school, and actually the class that he taught was called Law and Entrepreneurship. What we did was we started a fake company, and we established its governing documents, established compensation plans, employment contracts, any intellectual property protections that we had to consider depending on the business that we started, and we took it from inception all the way to an S1 filing, right? So we did all of that, and believe it or not, it was more work than a lot of my other classes that were kind of required classes for the bar exam
Yeah.
and other things. But the things I learned in that class were directly on point to everything that I do at work and in my career. And that has built like a tremendous foundation for me that has allowed me to excel, along with Mark, of course, giving me the responsibility that he's given me and the authority that he's given me to kind of move forward in my career. So, but we've digressed a little bit. But so
No, that's perfect. That actually answers the question that Miss Val was having, because I was going to lead into that, right? So, where does the firm, and
yeah,
then where does Gus kind of fit into knowledge, understanding, and credibility, right? For being able to lead such large types of transactions. So this is actually perfect
of
backstory.
course. Yeah, of course. But in addition to that, I kind of wanted to just kind of put some color into Mark's background, and obviously when you're involved in these companies, involved in the OTC, you build relationships with all different kinds of people, brokers, investment bankers, analysts, IR firms, PR firms, everything that's involved with this. Exchange Act counsel,
Mm.
auditors, accountants. I mean, there's so many people involved in a public company, and in so many aspects of it, especially the disclosure aspects, which is arguably the most important part, right? Because the audited financials are going to be what representations the company makes and what investors are going to make their decisions based on. So in this process, Mark has built these relationships and has this really broad and thorough understanding of so many aspects that was only, his capability was only enhanced because of his legal background as well.
Mm.
So not only can he understand the business side of things, he understands the legal side of things, and legal is a part of almost everything, even the accountants and the auditors, because of the certain representations that companies are and aren't allowed to make. So he's been able to kind of like mend that and kind of tailor that to exactly what his clients have needed up until now, right? So from there, the next thing is kind of like, okay, we're a law firm and we're a business and our clients have needs, and we make a decision as to whether we can fulfill those needs or not, or how we can help our clients advance themselves in the best way possible. Another part of our firm has always been this debt remediation process, capital raising process
Mm.
on that back end of our restructuring, which I think we had a conversation about a long time ago,
Right.
like one of our shows, right? So we're always in that realm. That being said, let's shift back to the SPAC market and the perspectives of SPACs, right? So the way a SPAC is started is by someone called a sponsor. The sponsor incorporates the SPAC. The sponsor controls the board of the SPAC. The sponsor controls management of the SPAC, because remember, the SPAC is still a company, so it has to follow all corporate governance procedure. It has to follow all Exchange Act reporting requirements. It has to follow all accounting requirements. It's still a business, even though it's not operational. It's still an entity. It's still a corporate entity. It's still a business. While that while that is going on, the sponsors are the people who are responsible for targeting the company that the SPAC's going to acquire and eventually consummate a business combination with.
Hmm.
The way that the sponsors get compensated is with something called founder shares, which are generally just a separate class of common stock that is generally just convertible into a class of the freely trading common stock,
Okay.
which is, let's, for our purposes, call it Class A. It's traditionally
Right.
called Class A. That's what's going to be on the market. That's what you can go on NASDAQ and buy. The Class B is also going to be common, and generally they're convertible at a 1-to-1 for the sponsors at the consummation of the business combination, which is the whole purpose of the SPAC. The sponsors obviously need to undertake all the expenses to establish the SPAC, continue the SPAC's operations, whatever professional fees are involved, whatever listing fees are involved, whatever fees are associated with running the SPAC, and being compliant with SEC reporting requirements, any listing requirements. So the sponsors get compensated, like I said, by that's those sponsor shares, right? Let's say these sponsor shares are 2 million. There's 2 million sponsor shares, right, in a SPAC, which are going to be these Class B common that convert into Class A upon consummation of a business transaction. The sponsors get these shares for a nominal value, but SPAC shares are always IPO'd at $10, and those shares are going to convert into what would be, a $10 share. And the nominal value, I want to say, it's generally around $25,000 that the sponsors will pay for it. So they pay $25,000 and end up with a $20 million position at the end of the day if the business consummation is consummated.
Okay. Okay. Hold on one second, because let's pause and let's exhale, because I know, again, just because it's December 15th, today is an interesting day. So I know that a good portion of the community that's listening and watching right now is literally standing in front of their whiteboard and saying, okay, I saw some news come out. I'm somewhat involved, not I, but I, speaking on the third person here, have maybe some transactions or some things that are happening. So trying to, again, figure out how this all falls into place based on what has gone down literally this morning. So, and I'm being very high level and not speaking in specifics, but folks who know. Talking about conversion of stocks, conversion of shares and things of that nature. So you're saying that they all are initially priced at a $10 amount, and then they convert into something much more substantial than that. And as you're talking, let's talk about, I guess, timelines. Are there specific, and I didn't want to break your train of thought, but I wanted to add this in as well. Are there specific timelines? Are there specific types of critical paths, critical points that happen, that not just the internal folks, not just the folks that are directly involved, like you, from a legal perspective and from the litigation perspective, or from the representation perspective, but folks outside, the folks that are vested, will see and will know that they're actually transacting? Will there be more visibility to the investment community as a company goes through this particular process, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there will be, but so at the when a business combination is considered consummated, something needs to be filed called an S4, which is a registration statement that needs to be filed with the SEC to now issue the shares of the surviving company. Right. The S4 is essentially an S1. It's just with multiple companies. Making all the disclosures, and S1 would require having all the audits in place, and S1 would require. It's very similar to an S1 in that respect. It's almost exactly the same, just a couple more moving pieces. Once the announcement is made public, of course, the combination agreement outlines every step of the transaction. So anything anyone would probably want to ever know is going to be in that in that agreement.
Okay.
I think the problem that a lot of retail investors have is understanding the agreement. It's
That's where I wanted to get. See,
extremely difficult
I'm
to.
mentally setting you up, brother, because that's mentally where I wanted to get to. Right, didn't want to leave anything on the table. I didn't want to leave any assumptions. When we hang up on this right here, I didn't want folks going out there and Googling or tweeting about stuff that they only knew half baked about. So there you go. That's exactly where I wanted to go.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know. I saw a bunch of tweets this morning of people explaining or trying to say things, and
Yeah.
like the
And I saw you interjecting,
agreements are
or I
100
saw
pages.
somebody in the firm. It may have been Mark. Mark's he's dangerous, man. When he gets out there online, you never know. Might be giving away the lotto numbers, but again, those types of things, we wanted to go and nip that in the bud and make sure that we have concrete facts and actually provide value to the folks who rightfully so want to have the right information. So again, I would rather come directly from you as opposed to someone coming and getting it off of StockTwits or off of whatever other search engine that they're looking for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think these scenarios are much different than a lot of other scenarios where people are kind of just talking about what they think is happening or they think is going on, versus what's actually happening and versus what's actually going on. Because usually the information that they're talking about is publicly available. So it's interesting to see the takes that people have when it's like blatantly untrue if you just opened up, the document and kind of looked at it. I think back to kind of what we were saying is it's obviously difficult for people to understand and digest. That's why there are so many people involved in public companies, and two, it's why it requires so much work and training and resources to employ all these people. It's not something that could be resolved in 40 characters on Twitter, or 140 characters on Twitter. And that's why I don't even respond. It's like, I don't even know what I could possibly say to you in 140 characters. I mean, we've been on for 20 minutes and I feel like I've told you 1% of what is going on.
Exactly.
I feel like I haven't gotten there, and I'm talking and I can talk way faster than I can type. So it's always interesting to see that stuff. But I hope that people always take those things with a grain of salt, because a very large majority of the time, that person that's speaking isn't really using any information that's,
and it's unfortunate because again, that tends to legitimately move markets and move real currency, having those water cooler type conversations as opposed to, again, having the real factual conversation with someone in the know. So, and I know that my community is smart. They know better, but there's always that one or two or three folks that are lurking in the background who are stirring up the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But this is where we have those conversations and get into it. I see folks chiming in with some excellent questions. I see folks chiming in also from LinkedIn. Good to see you, Mr. Jackson. Let me ask you this question. Let me pose this out to the community, and I ask you this ahead of time so you're kind of already aware of it. Came in from Twitter this morning, and it's actually a good question, so that's why I'm going to ask it. When an OTC goes through a SPAC process, if shares are purchased by the SPAC to acquire ownership, once that happens, can those shares then be converted into something like a preferred shares, effectively eliminating some of the existing outstanding shares?
So that question makes a lot of assumptions. So I would find it difficult to answer. So I'm going to rephrase it in a way that would make it easier for me to answer, and I think would achieve the same goal. When a company, when an acquisition occurs from a company to company, right, and it's a stock acquisition, the acquiring company would provide stock to the target company as consideration, right? And by consideration, compensation, I mean money. Instead of cash, we're using stock. And that's the only difference. So and remember, like the levels of a company, right? There's three levels. There's shareholders, which are the owners of the company, who own the value of the company. There are the directors, who are decided by the shareholders, and then of course management, who's decided by the directors. So let's say you own a lemonade stand and I own a lemonade stand. Your lemonade stand is worth $10,000. Mine's worth $100,000. If I wanted to buy your lemonade stand, and you're the owner of the lemonade stand, I can give you $10,000 worth of cash, right? And you'd put $10,000 of cash in your pocket, and then maybe we work out arrangements with your employment or your involvement with the company after the acquisition. And that's assuming that I'm buying 100% of it. But let's say I wanted to buy your company with equity in my lemonade stand. My lemonade stand's $100,000. So your company is worth about 10% of my company. So I would acquire your company with 10% of my equity.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, you, instead of putting cash in your pocket, you now have equity of our merged company in your pocket, which could be shares and a membership of an LLC. It could be a partnership interest, whatever kind of entity is merging. It's just the equity in that company is now the equity of the acquiring company, the buyer, is now provided to the equity holders of the target.
Makes sense.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
It's kind of hard to conceptualize. It's like I feel like you're like kind of doing gymnastics to think about it, but it's I mean, I know how it is. I've beaten this into my head for the last 10 years. So
Thank you, Mark. Tell Mark we thank him for that background and that insight. Okay, cool. That's good to know. So hopefully that question was answered appropriately. Hopefully my guy is listening and watching, or either catching on the replay, because that was good stuff. I don't know if these are specific to a deal or specific to a transaction, but I do want to bring up these questions that are coming in as well. Rollover notes. How do they apply to equity line of credit? Where does that fall in as it relates to, again, SPAC conversations, SPAC acquisitions, things of that?
Here's how I could answer this. So when these companies merge, right? Of course, let's go back to our lemonade stand example. You bought $5,000 worth of lemons, right? So now your company has a $5,000 liability. When we, if I were to acquire you, I'd be acquiring you with that $5,000 liability. So some people might call it something that rolls over into the surviving company or the merged company, right? So that's how, that's just generally how the exchange of title of any property works. If there's a cloud on the title of property, if there's a lien against a house and you're buying it, if the lien isn't satisfied, the lien's still on the house. If I'm buying a business and that business owes somebody money, the debt doesn't go away. I'm buying the debt too because I'm buying the business. Does that make sense? If that's, I hope that could.
No, that makes sense to you. I just want to make sure. I'm just watching to see if Miss Val types in with another question subsequent to that, but that actually makes sense. I like the lemonade analogy there, brother. Well, I don't know why mine is 10 grand and yours is 100 grand though. We're gonna talk about that after the show. How come mine? How come I'm selling the cheap lemonade and you got the bougie lemonade? But see, that's how my mind works. I digress, brother. I digress. Let's go into, again, SPAC.
I wanted to go back to that because I feel like I didn't really close my thought before.
Yeah.
So back to that original. This might get confusing, but back to that original, traditional SPAC process, right? Those sponsors have this huge position in the event that they consummate a business transaction. That's essentially their compensation for doing all of the work that they've done, the due diligence for the target, the fees that they've expended for all the expenses for continuing the existence of the SPAC, like professional fees, auditors, accountants, legal, um, application fees, listing fees, whatever it is with the SPAC. And I know, I'm sure you might remember this, and a lot of our audience might remember this. There was a time in like 2020, 2021 where, A-Rod had a SPAC. I think Steph Curry had a SPAC.
Yeah.
Everybody had a SPAC. And, they'd get their advisors together and say, oh, let's start a SPAC and figure this out and do it. And what would happen is that since the since the benefit to the sponsors was so substantial, almost irrelevant to the success of the target and the existence, the surviving existence, the perpetual existence of the operating company that the SPAC decides to acquire, it would obviously de-incentivize some DD on the sponsors, and it would kind of result in the sponsors kind of walking away with this huge chunk of change, this huge equity position in the surviving company. And it would almost leave the SPAC investors, right, the IPO investors on the SPAC side, which are generally institutional, but when a business combination is consummated, there's going to get press. Analysts are going to start talking about it. There's going to be press on it. We're on NASDAQ. You're not just having people on Twitter looking at what stock to buy today.
Great point.
These are analysts that are writing white papers about the technology. There's institutions that have done more due diligence than, sleep that I've gotten in the last 3 months. They put this is their jobs, are to make these decisions and run their funds and manage their funds the way that they, in the best interest of the people that they're managing their money for. So there's a lot more. I don't know how to say this, but there's obviously a lot more checks and balances. And
I was going to say oversight, but checks and balances, that's good. Yeah.
Oversight, exactly. So that being said, when these SPACs would consummate the business combination with their target, the institutional investors might jump ship, the sponsors might jump ship, everyone jumps ship. And then all of a sudden, these analysts are realizing, oh, maybe this wasn't the best idea. And there has been a lot of SPAC business combinations that have not gone well.
Okay.
Because of that, they've lost a lot of popularity in the markets. The perception of SPACs has decreased significantly. I mean, between 2020 and 2021, there was an exuberant amount of money raised at IPOs for SPACs. 2022, the tides have turned, and it's not the same, right? And back to just some rules for SPACs. SPACs have a deadline. They have to consummate a transaction within a certain time period. And if they don't get it done within that certain time period, they have to request an extension, depending on the charter of the specific SPAC. There is going to be extension payment amounts, which is generally how it works. There's going to be a percent of that trust account, which is all the money that was raised at the IPO, right? It's just put in a trust account, an interest-bearing trust account. And if they don't consummate this transaction, the sponsors are now responsible for winding up the SPAC, because the SPAC is no longer allowed to exist after this time period if there's no business combination consummated. When they wind that up, they give their money back to the IPO investors, the institutional investors, and, of course, there's always liability when you're running a public company, regardless of what's going on. And there is, of course, people's reputations at stake in a lot of, certain situations, when it's a Steph Curry, when it's an A-Rod opening up a SPAC, and, with some other political figure that has a family office that targets a certain industry. There's a ton of considerations that these sponsors are going through right now because of the lack of popularity with SPACs. There were some conversations that were had with Mark and some of his contacts, and they came to this idea of, hey, so since what turns people off about a SPAC is the sponsor's equity post-closing after the business combination, and how they can kind of run away with a lot of money for not a lot of money that they put into it. And it was turning off a lot of retail investors after the business combination. And I know it's also, I don't know, I've heard it's been difficult, at least a little more difficult. The market's kind of cooled down with raising money at IPO for the SPACs initially from institutions because of the lack of success that some SPACs have seen after business combinations. So with that being said, there's a bunch of SPACs right now that are in existence. And just for perspective, it's generally around 2 years. That's like the timeline a SPAC has to go and consummate a combination, right? A lot of these SPACs are approaching these deadlines, and these sponsors are okay with getting out. And we came up with this idea, and we're not sure if it's ever been done before. I'm not aware of anything, and no one I know is aware of this ever being done before. So back to Ms. Val's question about the experiences. I actually have, we have more experience than everyone in the world in the position that we're in, because we're not aware of it ever being done before.
Dude, I've been setting you up for the last 30 minutes to get to that point right there. So again, this is a commercial for Basile Law Firm, because, and again, I just want to pause right here because again, I know a lot of folks. I'm seeing a ton of folks on Twitter. They should come over to YouTube so they can actually chime in and ask questions. But appreciate you for watching over there as well. With the recent news about specific organizations, and I know a lot of the folks in this community are interested in that community. This backstory, this background, this experience, this level of professionalism coming from you and your team and everyone involved, the oversight, I'll use that term again, the requirements, and I'm glad you spoke about those deadlines and those timeframes that I asked about as well, right? That have to be adhered to, or else someone has to start writing checks, right? Those are the things, hopefully, and again, you guys all know that I'm not personally vested in any of these organizations. Hopefully that gives folks pause and assurance that what's happening now, literally right now, as I've found out 5 o'clock this morning, right? What's happening right now is vetted. What's happening right now is supported, sponsored, all those good things by folks who have the best interest in heart of the shareholders, the directors, and the management, right? So I really wanted to get into that. That's kind of the backstory. That's kind of the value that I wanted to make sure that we brought today, specifically today, about what's going on and how SPACs worked past tense and how they work today, and what you and your team are doing to ensure that all three pieces of that puzzle right there, shareholders, directors, and management, are represented properly and represented effectively. And it's kind of a win-win-win situation, as long as everything, not speaking of dollars and cents, but it's a win-win situation, meaning that there's proper oversight, there's proper management, there's proper representation and things of that nature. So that was the part that I wanted to make sure that we talked about today, man. So you're a good man, doctor. Again, put that doctor at the top of. Had to get that off, man, because I really wanted to make sure that piece was clear, right? And again, 45 minutes after we get offline, didn't want to see the madness in 140 characters. I wanted to hear it straight from, and not calling you a horse, but straight from the horse's mouth here, so folks understand that, yeah, Gus Passanante knows what he's doing, knows what he's talking about, and the law firm that he's got in his pocket is spearheading a lot of the work that's happening within this space, within the financial tech industry. So, all right, off my high horse. I'm sorry.
No, thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate those words. It makes me feel good to know that, like, my clients have a lot of faith in me, and the people around me have a lot of faith in me. Obviously, because I look like I'm in high school, it's like difficult to convey a deep understanding of anything. It's so it's always, I mean, I'm used to it at this point. It's I walk into a lot of rooms and needing to prove to people I know what's going on.
It's all good.
So I'm used to it at this point.
It's all good. Was there anything specific that you wanted to tie off on?
Yeah. So just to wrap up that point, right? The scenario that we're advising some of our clients to go down, and believe it or not, there's a few at this point, and it's that. So essentially, since these sponsors, right, they're reaching that period where they may have to dissolve and wind up the SPAC, they kind of want out. So what they're doing is they're getting rid of their sponsorship position, and they're willing to sell it to anyone else who's willing to become a sponsor and assume those liabilities and those responsibilities and the obligations that they have to the SPAC and the SPAC shareholders. In this scenario, we kind of looked at it as an opportunity to for some of our clients to just kind of step into those shoes and basically bring it all together, right? And which would end up with the obviously, the obvious end goal for every company on the OTC is to get onto a national exchange. And the difference between this scenario and, let's say, a traditional SPAC scenario is that when the sponsor is also the target, there is, although it's a transaction that, where the parties may be related or interested, which is completely fine, by the way, as long as everything's done at arm's length and there's proper due diligence taking place, which I know we've spoken about before, with like intercompany loans and things like that. But when this happens, I think it's important to recognize that everybody's goal is the same, and it's to make sure that this company can thrive in an environment that it could prepare itself for, and it could put itself in to thrive. And we're really excited that we've been given the opportunity to try and do something like this. And it's like I said, I'm not aware of anyone ever doing this before, and I'm excited to hopefully be right at the head of the first people to ever do something like this.
And I can see you giving some lectures and some speeches. I don't know, NYU, I don't know, somewhere, right? TEDx talks, right? Passanante out there teaching the next generation of esquires of this is what we did, and that's exciting, man. That's exciting. You're breaking ground. You're responsive to all of your clients, not just the handful that I've seen, eye to eye, face to face. I know the history of the team. I know you got a stellar captain there. Mark is guiding the ship the right way, and it's just good to see you're keeping your clients' best interests at heart and doing it the right way, because the news is always filled with everything else. The news is always filled with the issues and the problems, especially when it comes to representation, litigation, whatever. Right? Folks sitting in your seat always seem to get the bad rap. It just is, right? Because you're so close to a lot of opportunities and a lot of situations. It's good to see the firm doing what is expected of them above and beyond, and doing it with professionalism, and doing it with high bits of credibility. So hats off to you, man. Kudos to you guys. This may be the last time before we, for the holidays.
Thanks, Shane. But also, I do want.
What's up?
But before we move on from that, I do give a shout out to everyone else that's been involved, because this isn't something that one person can do. The amount of times and phone calls we have to have 15 people on the line to try and come to a resolution or try and figure something out is more times than I think any person would ever want to be on the phone with 15 people at once. But these are the necessary steps, and we're always there. There's a big group. There's a handful of us that are all kind of fighting for the same thing and pushing for the same thing. So it's not just us. It's not just me. It's not just my clients. But it's the other attorneys that are involved doing other aspects of certain work. we all kind of need to work together, and the amount of facilitation that's involved, and the things that kind of just need to be timed up and teed up at the perfect time, and it's it's a lot, but it takes a lot of work, and we have a really, like you were saying before, we have a really strong team and a bunch of really dedicated people who are really good at what they do. So it's
You guys are locked in, man. You guys are locked in. One thing, I see a couple of folks. So I see someone, and I'm not going to mention their name. They took a screen grab of the session right now, left a positive comment, but the shot shows you digging in your nose. So I'm gonna ask that person. I'm gonna take me off. I'm just gonna have Gus on here. Take another screen grab and tweet that out as well, man. But and when I do that, tell folks again where, if they're a C-suite person, if they're a financial or an investor, or if they're a founder of an organization and looking to have representation from the Basile, how they can reach you, where they can reach you, and really the core tenets and the principles that the firm works on, if you don't mind, because I know you're kind of branching into some different aspects that you're doing. So if you could just talk real quickly about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, like I said before, we are involved in a lot of aspects of a lot of companies, and we analyze our clients' positions and always do everything that we can to make sure that we advise them the best way possible and make sure that they keep their shareholders' interests in mind, and that's always first for us and first for them. And we think of creative solutions, and we're willing to push and be the first people to do things. And I think it's the time that we're in right now is a really interesting time, especially with a lot of the opportunities that we've been coming across, and for our clients, and I think that we were able to provide a lot of solutions that companies need, because from experience, from Mark's perspective as an entrepreneur, from my own perspective, for the amount of things that I've tried and failed at, and tried to start and do, and things that I have done or haven't done. It's really easy to get lost in the work and the business part, and let's say you're trying to get to the moon. It's really easy to get lost in getting to the moon, and kind of let things kind of slide by. And I think that's kind of where we are able to really make sure that those two ideas connect, making sure that we do everything correct legally, and making sure that the company can do everything that they need to and want to do from a creative perspective or from an entrepreneurial perspective, and make sure that everyone's kind of accomplishing their goals, efficiently, and doing things the right way.
I got nothing else to say. He just dropped the mic right there, folks. That's pretty cool. I see some comments that are coming in. I see the other screen grab, which is good, because again, this time you weren't grabbing it in your nose. I wanted to make sure you're right. The comment hasn't come through the system yet, but I see it here online, and it's a question, and then we'll close on this. Do you guys ever get tired of hitting home runs? Right? This is exciting time. Excited to see what the future holds. So there you go. I really wanted to mention that right there. That's coming from the community as well.
I cannot. I don't think I can be any more thankful for the things that we've done in the last couple of years, and I can't complain at all. And I'm really proud what we've done, and where how far we've come, and the way that we've kind of been able to kind of develop and mold ourselves to provide support and guidance for a lot of our clients, and be creative while doing it, and kind of get garnered enough trust from a lot of our clients to kind of go in our direction and believe in us and trust the process. And do we ever get tired of it? No. I get tired of trying to do it sometimes, right? I get exhausted trying to get to that finish line, but getting to it is a really good feeling. And it's just like anything else, it's when you're working on something so hard for so long, and you finally see it stick, that feeling is obviously unmatched. It's kind of It's a
Amazing.
great. I'm sure no one feels it more than Mark after getting beat down for 6 years and then coming back with the decision to tell everybody that they were wrong. Everyone that told you that you were wrong.
Yeah.
Um, that 8-hour based decision. I'm sure is something he's gonna want on his tombstone or something.
I love
But
it. I love it. Hopefully that's a long time away. That's a long time away. But I'm gonna take care of you and this sleep deprivation. I'm gonna send you some of my coffee there, brother. And it's going to be this first run of coffee too. This is kind of an exclusive before I do another one. So I'm gonna make sure that you and Mark and the squad there, I'm sending you bags of coffee because I know you got your new machine. So we're going to take care of you on that end for sure. Gus, this is good, man. Again, I think we are. I'm gonna say I know we're really providing value to the community, providing value to folks that are interested in everything from the legal, from the litigation, from the financial tech, from the biz tech perspective. And again, I haven't mentioned any specific companies, but again, there was some news that dropped today that you and your team are directly related to. That is all good. And we talked in depth today about requirements for those organizations that are in that particular state, making sure that due diligence continues to happen now that there's going to be additional oversight in those particular companies, and in this one in particular that's elevating to another category. The individual investor, the retail investor, everyone that's involved in that entire chain and that entire continuum has information that they need coming from the proper sources. So I'm glad that we had the conversation about requirements, about again, I keep using the term oversight, about just awareness of the steps that are happening. It's not done. Everything's not done yet, right? There are still a couple of I's to dot, T's to cross, just before anyone starts ringing bells or anything of that nature. But again, those things are moving forward. So again, man, I thank you for the time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your support. You and the squad out there, man. Let's definitely continue to have these conversations. We'll probably won't have another one until after the holidays. Let you relax and go spend time with the family, man. But thanks again, brother.
Thank you, James. Always a pleasure.
All right, you guys be good. If you found value in this, share it with someone. If you didn't find value, I know you're going to let me know. But be good to yourself. And again, if I don't talk to any of you online, have a great holiday as well. Enjoy your family.